Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Masquerade. This is a 3-cost action card from Intrigue, and it says +2 cards. Each player with any cards in hand passes one to the next such player to their left at once. Then you may trash a card from your hand. So, a little bit weird, this text. This is a very unique effect, this passing cards thing. What's the deal with this? Well, when new players first look at Masquerade, they tend not to really understand what's going on, which is understandable. So, your initial analysis might be, okay, so it draws a card like Moat, and Moat is not actually that great of a card. It will optionally trash something, and it also does this card passing thing. Like, you might try it, and you'll hand an estate to your opponent, and they'll give you an estate back, and you're thinking, well, what even is this doing for me, right? So it's this combination of what seem to be fairly weak effects. Like trashing a card is fine, but it's only one card. And this third effect that's not really doing very much. So it's easy to look at Masquerade and think that this card isn't very strong. And it's just sort of weird and you don't really know what it's doing for you. But that's wrong. So Masquerade is actually unbelievably powerful card. This is incredibly strong. This is actually a top 10 Kingdom card almost in terms of strength. Out of all of the Kingdom cards that have ever been made, Masquerade is almost in the top 10. That's incredible power coming from a card. And when rankings have been done, so historically there were like power rankings that rated every card based on its cost. This has always been either first or second place of most powerful 3-cost card in all of Dominion, usually battling with Ambassador for the top spot. So that's in sign that this is an incredibly good card, and it's what it is about it that is so strong is the way that it draws you cards first and then trashes a card. If this card didn't have the passing thing on it, this would still be a really powerful card on its own. It's just drawing first and then trashing is very strong. And you consider that drawing cards is generally pretty strong. And trashing is generally pretty strong, but this particular combination in this order is very good. So why is this particular combination so good? Well, one of the main problems that you tend to have with trashing cards is that you have to give up having a good turn in order to be able to trash. So if you think about the extreme example of Chapel, you're usually not buying anything at all on the turn you play Chapel. You just trash cards and you can't buy anything. Now, with a Masquerade, when you play it, you draw up to 6 cards in hand, and then you can optionally trash one from that, and you still have 5 cards left in your hand. So when we talked about Sentry way back when in its video, one of the main benefits that Sentry had in a way was that it let you keep having these decent turns while trashing, but you had that sort of huge randomness payoff involved in what exactly you were allowed to trash, and it got a bit more difficult. But that's not so much the case with Masquerade. You still have this good 5-card hand, but you get to trash the worst card out of the 6 that you've looked at from your hand. So it's really, really easy to trash the cards that you want to trash with Masquerade. It's so much easier. And that means that Masquerade laser focuses on trashing your estate. Very, very easy to trash all of your estates first, which are the ones that you want to get rid of first with Masquerade. And that means you're now having these decent hand-size hands that are filled with copper or better without having to worry about the estates. And that sort of makes a very big difference. So because Masquerade is a draw card, it's also cycling you through your deck a lot faster than other single card trashes. So what this means is that you are reaching your shuffles more often, and remember, you can't play the good cards that you gain until you have shuffled them into your deck, usually. So you get to laser focus on trashing the worst cards. You get to play the better cards that you've bought more often, and it also gives you good hands early on for buying better cards. Bear in mind that when we talk about playing the better cards more often, that also includes Masquerade. Like, if the most important card in your deck is Masquerade, because it draws you through your deck, you are more likely to play Masquerade sooner than you would with most other trashers, just because it's drawn you cards and you've got through your deck. So this is a nice overall effect that Masquerade has by drawing and trashing. Now, the trashing is optional. This means that if there's a particular reason why you want to keep your 6-card hand, you can. Although bear in mind that the passing is not optional. So what that means is that although you've got this 6-card hand, one of those 6 cards was actually passed to you. So it's a rare situation early on where potentially, you could have this 6-card hand that is all 6 coppers. You're most likely to be passed an estate from your opponent, but you might not. And that could mean that you actually get like a 6 purchase early on if you want, like, say, Artisan or something. It's probably not going to happen, and you're probably not necessarily going to do that, give up trash, but it's an option. It lets you do that. It's also really, really cheap. It costs 3, so you can always buy it on your first 2 turns. It's a bit sad if you have to spend a 5 on a Masquerade, but honestly, sometimes you will. There will be times when you want to trash, and Masquerade's a really good trasher, so you will just buy it for 3. But on the most likely split that you get, which is 4 and 3 on those first 2 turns, because Masquerade costs 3, you can get a really nice 4-cost card along with it in the opening, which is usually really nice for a card. So there's a lot of cards that are really good early on that specifically cost 4 so that you can't get 2 of them. So it's nice to have a powerful card like Masquerade and also be able to open with something like Militia that's very strong in the opening. And it's worth noting that Masquerade is not an attack, so Moat will not defend you against it. The passing is technically not an attack. Maybe sometimes it can feel like it might be, but it isn't, so you can't stop it from happening. And lastly, any cards that are passed to you or passed away from you, they don't count as gaining them, and they don't count as trashing them. So any cards that have effects around gaining or trashing them, it's not being triggered by the passing effect of a Masquerade. So Masquerade's passing effect can sometimes make Masquerade feel like it is a card where you're forced to trash every time you play it. Now, that's not actually the case. The actual trashing is optional, but you do have to pick a card from your hand and essentially take it out of your deck. Now, you're going to receive something else from that, and that might be more junk. So early on in the game, you're probably going to want to pass an estate to your opponent because it's the worst card in your deck, and you'll find you're going to get back coppers and estates. It's because you've got such a high density of these cards, it's very easy for your opponent to find one and pass it to you. Now, as the game progresses, your opponent will hopefully be trashing their junk cards, and as such, they'll find it harder and harder to draw their starting hand with bad cards. So you will start to hope that you can force your opponent to give you better cards. And alternatively, on your end, because you get to draw ideally your whole deck before you play Masquerade, it should be way easier for you to find a bad card to pass your opponent. Even if you only have like one bad card in your deck, you would ideally be able to draw that bad card into your hand before you play your Masquerade and hope therefore that you can pass them a bad card and they're forced to give you a good card in return. Now, in order for that to work, ideally, you're going to be able to draw your hand with something other than Masquerade. If you have to use Masquerade as your only draw, and it is draw because your hand size can go up if you're not trashing with it, then you can sort of trap yourself in a situation where you're forced to pass something, but all of your cards are good. If you think that you have, for example, a 20-card deck, and the only way that you are drawing that is through like Villages and Masquerade, well, any Masquerades played early, you might not find that one bad card in your deck, and then you'll be forced to pass something like Golds or Villages or Masquerades or what have you. So while Masquerade is a draw card, and you can use it like a draw card, people tend to use it more as a trashing card than a drawing card, just because the passing can feel like it's forcing you to get rid of the good cards that you don't want to get rid of out of your deck. So, like all of these sort of forced trashers, even though Masquerade isn't one, you want to watch out for cards that can force you to play them. So cards like Golem or Herald, these will look for an action card, and if they find one, then they force you to play it. You actually don't have a choice. You must play that card. And you can sort of get into trouble with cards like Masquerade and other forced trashing if you do that. Similarly, cards like Vassal, you may flip over the top card of your deck and it's a Masquerade and you don't actually want to play it now. Even though that one is not forcing you to play it, it is sort of penalising you for not playing it. So Masquerade, to some extent, doesn't necessarily play very nicely with cards like that. A little hint and tip for you with Masquerade here. If you're going to play 2 Masquerades in a turn, you usually don't want to pass your worst card first. What you want to do is pass something else and then wait until the second play to pass your worst card. So if you know, for example, that your opponent doesn't have an estate in their hand, or at least they're unlikely to, and you have 1 estate left in your deck, you could try passing a copper first turn and hope they give you a copper back. And then in the second play of Masquerade, you pass them the estate, and you hope that they give you the copper back that you passed them originally. If you pass them the estate first, then after your second pass, the estate is now back at you. They'll just pass it straight back, because the card you hand them goes into their hand, so they'll just have it available. Now, something that you hear people say a lot is that Masquerade seems like it might be a counter to junking, but I don't think that this is true. Masquerade is only a counter to junking attacks in much the same way that it's just a trash card, right? It can get rid of your junk, but it's not. The passing bit is not necessarily all that relevant to that. What's a lot more relevant is the fact that it's trashing your cards. So if you are drowning in curses because your opponent's playing Witch on you and you've decided not to get your own because you think that Masquerade heavily counters it, then sure, you can start passing curses to your opponent. But eventually what's going to happen is that those curses are just going to come straight back to you. Your opponent's going to have it in their hand and they will just pass it back. So it doesn't really act like a counter in that way. I mean, sure, you could argue that that means that your opponent now has a curse in their hand when you weren't cursing them before, but Masquerade isn't really a junking attack in that way, because eventually, the junk's just going to come straight back to you and then you'll trash it. It doesn't automatically reflect and rebound all curses, so it doesn't really work sort of as a defense in that way. Now, is there any reason to be scared about the passing effect of Masquerade? Because if you trash all of your bad cards and get really thin, because Masquerade is a trashing card, and that's what you want to do, if you keep playing it, are you going to be required to pass good cards to your opponent? And if your opponent has a Masquerade, are you going to be forced to pass good cards to them? Well, the truth is that yes, you are, but you shouldn't really worry about it, because over time, your opponent is going to have to do the same thing to you. So if you, for example, are both playing Masquerade and thinning down your deck, then on your opponent's turn, they may well play a Masquerade and you've only got good cards in your hand and you have to hand them one of your good cards while they hand you a junk card. But later on in the game, you may find that the same thing happens to you when you play a Masquerade. They will eventually be forced to give you a good card back. So something that people think about is, should I leave a single junk card in my deck for my Masquerade so that when it's my turn, I have something bad to pass to my opponent? And the truth is that you're probably going to end up in this situation anyway. So normally if you just focus on trashing all of your bad cards, because you get to do a pass just before you trash, often there will be a case where the last bad card in someone's deck just gets passed to their opponent, and then on their turn they'll draw it up and they'll pass it to you. And so this one junk card tends to just sit there. This is a 2-player game I'm talking about, but it tends to just exist and it just jumps between opponents on their turn. So because this tends to happen anyway, you shouldn't really think about wondering if you should keep bad cards around just to pass them on your opponent's turn. If you think about it, if you're drawing a random 5-card hand from your deck and you want to try and have enough junk to ensure that you have good odds of having a junk card in your starting hand, then that means that 1 in every 5 cards in your deck needs to be a bad card that you're happy to lose. And that's quite a lot of bad cards to have. And usually, if you keep around that many bad cards, then what that means is that you're just not going to have a very good deck. What's a lot better is to get rid of all of those bad cards, have a good turn, and if occasionally you have to pass a silver or a village or something to your opponent, then, well, so what, right? It's a lot better. That one extra card that you're not going to draw from that village is nothing compared to having bad junk cards in your deck, like 5 or 6 of them, right? That's just so much worse than like losing a single silver or a village or something. So, and I mean, you can get cards that sometimes junk yourself, and you can then pass the junk to your opponent. So a card like Treasure Trove, for example, will gain you a copper every time you play it. And you may be able to, I mean, okay, that's an awkward example because it's a treasure, but it means that you might have more junk in your deck anyway that you can pass to your opponent when the situation arises. And so that sort of thing can be nice with Masquerade, but it's not, that junk will still come back to you. It's not necessarily something that you want to focus on. Like the passing of Masquerade, in some cases, is actually the least important part of the card. Like, don't worry too much about it, is sort of what I'm trying to say. It's not actually an attack, even if it feels like one. So is there any way that we can do something different when we're playing against someone who has a Masquerade? Even though this passing isn't an attack, it's still something that you're having to deal with. So things that you can do is you can think about trying to add a little bit of redundancy to your deck. So imagine that you've got some really important action card payload that you want to play. Like, you've got to play a couple of smithies to draw your deck, and then you want to be playing these action cards. Well, if you only have exactly the number of villages required to play all of your terminals, and someone plays a Masquerade against you and you're forced to pass them something, you might be tempted to pass them one of your villages, but then that means that you can't play all of your payload anymore. So if you have just try and get to a situation where you just have this spare card available of your most important ones, then that's really going to help and make the passing not feel so bad. In addition to that, you're always able to play Masquerade yourself. And if you do that, that means that, you are going to get into this situation where even when you have to pass something good, your opponent may be forced to do the same on their turn. The passing, if you don't play Masquerade, the passing can become a little bit one-sided, and they are passing you a fair amount of junk, and, you just have much lower opportunity to pass it back. And so you will pass some of that junk back, but you will actually keep some of it around if you're not playing your own Masquerade. And Masquerade being a trash card generally means that you're probably going to have one anyway, but it's also nice to deal with junk if you get past it, because it can just trash it. Anything that you can find that lets you keep a bigger hand size between turns is also going to be nice to help you find a bad card. So that could be your opponent's council rooms, for example. That will make it more likely that when you are required to pass a card to your opponent, it's going to have a bad card in it. There are also certain events like Expedition that when you play it, or when you buy it, you will end up with more cards in your hand, or something like Way of the Squirrel. Generally, anything that increases your starting hand size and it's not a duration card is going to require you to have a larger hand size between turns. Now, I wouldn't say that this is something that you would focus on when your opponent is playing Masquerade, but it is a thing that, does skew things ever so slightly in your favour. And alternatively, as a last resort, you might be forced to top deck something on a turn, or you have the opportunity to, and you can think about like putting a copper or an estate on top of your deck just in case you're hit with a Masquerade. But even if the problem then is that if you don't get Masquerade played on you, you still ended up with a bad card in your hand, which may not be ideal. You're expecting that to happen when your opponent plays a Masquerade, that one of the cards in your hand is going to end up not being great, but forcing it on yourself when you don't have to isn't so wonderful. But, it's an option that is there. Sometimes the option will be presented to you, and I guess you might as well take it when you've got it. Something that's very important to note with Masquerade is that the passing actually does get a whole lot worse when there are Handsize attacks. And by a lot worse, I mean a lot worse for your opponent. So the problem with hand-size attacks like Militia is that this results in a very small hand that your opponent has to pick cards from. So when you think about how when your opponent is drawing their whole deck and then playing Masquerade, that allows them to find the bad cards that they want. Generally, the less cards you have in your hand, the less choices you have, the less likely you are to find a card that you want to pass, and therefore you are forced into passing a better card. So what tends to happen with cards like Militia or Ghost Ship is that your opponent might feel the need, or even they have to, and they're forced into it, is essentially play with only a 2-card hand instead of 3. So they might want to keep like a village and a smithy in the hand, but then they also have to have this 3rd card that they're going to have to pass, and so that's usually going to be the worst card in the hand. And so instead of going down to 3 useful cards, they've only really gone down to 2 useful cards in the hand, and if they don't do that, you have the potential chance to steal a nice card from them with the pass. So these hand-size attacks are notable with Masquerade in making the passing effect of it actually pretty brutal and really feeling like an attack, because it's just so much worse. Particularly Legionary from Empires, I think it is. Yes, that card requires your opponent to go down to 2 cards in hand and then draw a random one, which means that they could end up with only 1 good card in their hand, or they could be more likely, they want to keep the village in the smithy. Well, now they're going to draw a random 3rd card, and it could be something really good, and now they're in a bit of a pickle. So watch out for the availability of cards like that. I'd say Masquerade's passing is really good in those situations. One exception to this rule that's notable, it's also in Intrigue, which is why it's notable here, is Torturer. Now, the problem here is that while this is technically a hand-size attack, it also allows your opponent to gain curses to their hand, and the nice thing about the curse being in their hand is that if you then play Masquerade, well, they're just going to pass that curse straight back to you. So in this case, while you've tried to play an attack and hope to junk them, because this one it goes into the hand, it's sort of an exceptional case in that the curse does come back to you. So this is part of why people might think that Masquerade is like a counter to junking attacks, because they've played it with Torturer and they think, I've taken the curse, but now it's immediately gone from my deck and I bounced it back at my opponent. And in this case, that actually is slightly what happens. It's only going to happen, of course, if you're playing a single Torturer. If you're playing more than 1 Torturer, then they might have to discard those curses from their hand or take multiple, and then it's still hurting them. And you're just going to trash that curse anyway, right? You were probably going to trash anything that they passed you, no matter what it was. So it doesn't really affect your opponent in that regard. But, as far as a hand-size discarding attack goes, you're not having Masquerade get the benefit of the hand-size attack as much with Torturer as you might do with other hand-size attacks. Another very notable exception, in fact this isn't really a notable exception, it's more of a combo, and that is Possession. Possession has this particularly brutal interaction with Masquerade. Possession as a card has these sort of protections built into it, where you are playing with your opponent's deck, but any card you gain go to you, and you can't actually trash their cards. They get set aside and returned to their deck. So it stops you from doing anything too horrible with your opponent in most cases. Like, you can't just gain a load of curses into their deck, and you can't trash all of their best stuff. However, pass cards, as we explained earlier, they're not gained and they're not trashed. And that means that the protections that Possession grants you do not apply in this case. And what does that mean? Well, that means that when you are possessing your opponent, you get to choose what they do. So you can play Masquerade and you can pick their best cards to pass to you. And you also get to pick what you pass back, because you're essentially playing both decks at that point, or both hands, sorry. So you can pick their possessions or their provinces, and you can get them to pass them straight to you. So if there is possession on the board, or maybe your opponent gets a possession from the black market deck or something, generally, once they get it, you want to try and get rid of your Masquerade if you can. You don't really want Masquerades in your deck if your opponent is possessing you. Now, it's not always possible, and sometimes you still just want the Masquerade anyway because it's the only trashing and it's a really good card and the trashing is really useful in this case. But, watch out for it. Now, you're never totally safe when possession and Masquerade are together. Your opponent can always try to pass one to you, so if they get their possessions up first, they might be able to have 2 Masquerades in their deck, like they gain another one, and then they will pass one into your deck when they next play Masquerade. And when they do that, that means you now have a Masquerade in your deck, and now, the fun begins where they're going to give away all of your provinces. This was all talking about 2-player Masquerade. Bear in mind that when you add more players, when you pass a card, it's actually going to someone else. So particularly in the case of possession, they will ask you to get rid of your provinces, but it won't actually be going to the possessor, it will be going to the other third player in the game. So it's very difficult to assess what the passing is doing in Masquerade in cases like that. So a lot of this video has been focused mostly on 2-player, but on the whole, because the passing tends to even itself out over time, I don't think it's necessarily going to be that different in the long run with more players that you add, with the one exception of possession. If you're the only one playing possession, then one person is going to be in big trouble, and the person who follows him in play order is going to get all these really nice cards, and you can actually help that other third player win in that case. Anyway, that's everything there is to say about Masquerade. So this unique effect, it's pretty passing thing, it's pretty weird. It's not necessarily the most impactful thing, except in the few occasions where it really is. But it's mostly the drawing and the trashing that it combines while being really cheap is what turns Masquerade into such an incredibly strong power card. And usually you'll be buying it on most boards where it shows up. So what we are going to do is we are going to transfer over to the online client, and we are going to generate some kingdoms with Masquerade, and we're going to assess how good it is for those kingdoms. So what do we have here? We have Masquerade is our only draw, and we have Shantytown as our only village. Masquerade is our only trashing, I said. We've got lots of draw. We've got Library, Laboratory, Courtyard, and Masquerade. We have Bridge as payload, along with Market for lots of buys and money, so that's really nice. I think what we're going to do, we're going to need a lot of Shantytowns to play a lot of bridges. Are we going to be better off? I mean, ideally we'd be drawing with Laboratory here. I think that's the best draw card that's available. We want to save as many Shantytowns as possible for buying and playing bridges. But the draw is not super great, so we definitely want to open with Masquerade and trash as much as we can. What are we going to open alongside Masquerade? Well, I'm not totally convinced by Bridge straight away, just because Masquerade is terminal, Bridge is terminal, Masquerade's likely to have a terminal collision early on. So I think I'm going to open Masquerade Silver, and I'm going to look to buy Laboratories first just to get that cycling, but soon I'm going to switch over to Bridges and Markets and Shantytowns, and I'm going to try and play as many bridges as I can. And I think the person who can play more bridges ultimately is going to win, but it might actually be difficult sometimes to draw everything unless I get quite a lot of labs. So maybe you eventually just start swapping over to provinces before you get the chance to play all of the bridges. But if I can get a lot of labs and a lot of markets into my deck, maybe if you play a lot of bridges, there will be some sort of 3-pile opportunity that shows up eventually. But yeah, so Masquerade's very important here. I don't know if I necessarily get more than one. I don't think I'm in such a rush to trash that I can't just get away with only trashing one card at a time. I will at some point lose some nice card. I'm probably going to give away a market or something. But yeah, Masquerade's really important here as the only trashing on a deck where trashing is really good because the draw is not super strong, but the payload and the payoff for drawing your deck is very high with Bridge. So Masquerade is a key important card there that's giving me all of my trashing. Now here we have Chapel alongside Masquerade and Trading Post and Upgrade. So there's a lot of trashing and potentially your opponent's bandits. So lots of things that can get trashed. There is no village. which is a bit of a problem. So what are we... Well, I say it's a bit of a problem, but what are the actual terminal cards with this Bandit, Masquerade upgrade? I think I'm... Well, hang on. What's the main goal here? I don't think Vassal can necessarily work because I don't know how good the action density is going to be. What are my other actions going to be? Poacher. I would like to play Bandits. There is no plus buy, and I think it's either going to be a minion stack or it's going to be playing a Bandit and trying to draw, but there is no draw. How good is trashing down and then just trying to play Bandit as much as possible? I think it's going to be, this is a board where we trash down and then it's a minion stack, actually. I think that's going to be better and more reliable, and the discarding attack from minion is actually quite helpful. And there's no need to worry about ordering with villages and so on, because there aren't any. Do we get an Ironworks and pick up some poachers and vassals? You know what, maybe we do. Maybe we do trash all of our cards and we actually are picking up vassal and poacher with Ironworks and minions, and we're hoping to hit minions and stuff with vassal, but maybe we don't need the vassal just because we have no plus buy. All we're doing is buying one province per turn. So is that super great with a minion stack? How long is it going to take us to kick off that minion stack, really? Well, I think Ironworks, gaining some of these, actually helps a lot with the money, so we're not even necessarily going to need that many minions. Okay, so I think what we do is we open Chapel and we open Ironworks, and we are going to be picking up some poachers, and we're going to trash down, and then we'll grab some vassals eventually with this, but we're going to get a whole bunch of poachers, and it's okay if poachers are pile empties and they start discarding, because we're going to have minion for our draw, which doesn't mind if you are discarding because it's a draw to X card. Okay, so there we go. I think that's what we're doing. I think we ignore Masquerade here, and that's just because it's not the terminal that you want to play. In fact, I don't think there is a terminal that we want to play except for Chapel, and then maybe at some point we miss a vassal. But, we don't really want to play Bandit in a minion deck. We're not expecting to have any treasure anyway. And yeah, so I think Masquerade is ignored here just because Chapel is a lot better, and there is other better draw available that we're going to be using, so we don't need it for that effect either. The passing is irrelevant. You will have spare poachers to pass over if your opponent is masquerading you. It's really not a worry at all. So what's happening here? We have, what's our trashing? We have Steward and Masquerade. What is our draw? We have Courtyard and Moat and Diplomat and Masquerade and Steward. So lots of draw here, but the only village is Festival. And the problem is that every single draw card that is available is essentially a +2 draw. Now, Courtyard said +3, but you have to top deck a card, so it's essentially +2 cards. So all of these 5 draw cards all say +2 cards on it. And going with Festival, that is like a Festival Moat engine, or literally you can have a Festival Moat engine. And that's quite bad for drawing, unfortunately, because you can never go above a hand size of 5 here, because your only village reduces your hand size. Now, you can get a lot of actions with Festival and Diplomat, but what are you doing with those actions anyway? Are we occasionally playing Baron? We can play Artisan, we can play Stewards and other sorts of draw, but you can't go light on Festivals and hope to get the actions from Diplomat. Well, I was saying there was never a way to increase your hand size, but that sort of isn't true with Diplomat, because it can be a village. It is possible, but you need to get a lot of Diplomats off. Maybe Festival and Diplomat, therefore, is actually the best thing we can do, but how do we get that many? Well, we've got Baron and we've got Festival, which is nice, and we've got Artisan to pick cards up. So I think what we do is we are trashing down as much as we can. We're probably going to keep a Baron and an estate around, so we're going to use Baron to spike up to getting Artisan early, and we're going to pick up Festivals, and we're going to be trying to do Festivals and Diplomats, and we really need to get thin, but we have got Steward to trash, and that's going to get us thinner a lot faster than Masquerade is. I'm wondering if Steward is going to be better than Masquerade just because it trashes 2 cards and we get there quicker. But on the other hand, well, Masquerade, I say it's a draw card, but so can Steward be as well. And I think I like the fact that Steward can also be money when we need it. So I think I'm opening Steward and Baron, and I'm going to try and get an early Artisan. Or if not, I will get Festivals and Diplomats, and I will try to make a draw engine, even though it's a little bit awkward. And I'm going to try and use Barons and Festivals and maybe Steward or 2 as my money, and get up to Province. So I think I skip Masquerade here, even though you want to get so thin that eventually Masquerade will be stealing this stuff. I don't think it's that much of a worry. I think it's easy to get a nice set of redundancy going here. So if your opponent is playing Masquerade, I don't think you necessarily care that much. Maybe if they're playing Masquerade a lot, you can just buy your own, and then you just get one later on. But I don't think I open with it. I think I open with Steward instead, because I'm not too worried about getting these sorts of cards until I've got like an Artisan to start gaining Festivals. So I don't care about the fact that Masquerade is giving me slightly better economy early on. I don't think. So there we go. So I think Masquerade just gets beaten to trashing and draw on that board. There's a lot of somewhat similar cards there. What's happening here? So what's our trashing? It is only Masquerade, so I think, and Replace as well, but I think Masquerade's going to be very important here. We have a Village Torturer engine going on that's also very important. So, yeah, I think Masquerade is critical here. We open with Militia and Masquerade, and we try to trash down, and we try to get the Village Torturer engine going off, and once that's going off, we've got Market for buy, we've got Replace for doing more stuff. We can trash a little bit better with Replace. We can start trying to curse an opponent. We can start milling provinces at the end and throwing curses at our opponent, which is nice. And we've just got an engine going on. We've got strong draw, we've got strong villages, we've got plus buy, we've got trashing. So Masquerade is a key card as part of an important engine. Oh, we've got plus buy with pawn as well. I always forget. And yeah, this is a general engine. With Masquerade, you're going to open with it because you want it for the trashing, and the trashing's really good for this deck. The fact that it's a draw card is also going to help a little bit to line up those torturers with your villages and get that off soon. Anyway, on to the last kingdom. We have trashing is just Masquerade. We have Workshop and Ironworks here, but it can only gain Masquerade and Lurker, so these are absolutely terrible for Workshop and Ironworks. And we've actually got Lurker as like a third gainer, so that's quite funny. Courtier we've got as buy and a gold gainer, but only card it can match up with is Nobles for getting multiple effects. We have got, so our draw is Laboratory Library, Nobles, Masquerade. It's okay for draw. I can see Festival and Nobles being quite nice. You've got Festival Library, actually, is probably going to be better, isn't it? If we start trashing with Masquerade, we can get Festival Library going, and we can eventually start using Lurker to gain more. I think the Lurker can also start gaining Nobles, actually. So I think what we do, I think we open Silver Masquerade. We start trying to get Festival Library going by buying stuff, and then as we're trashing down with Masquerade and drawing our deck with these, we start eventually adding in Lurkers because we've got all these buys and money with Festival, and then we start gaining Nobles with Lurkers, and by doing that we're just going to be adding extra points, and the Nobles are going to give us a little bit more consistency later on for drawing and finding the libraries. Like, Nobles is fine to add to something like a Festival Library engine because you've got so many plus actions, so having the draw is really nice. But you wouldn't, I think the library is still going to be really important early on. So it's sort of a mixture between library and Nobles, I guess. So the Masquerade is really important here because of its trashing, because we've got a strong engine that wants as few non-action cards in it as possible. And I think we can get quite a good engine and quite a lot of points going here. I think that's going to be the best thing that we have. Maybe we can use a courtier as well and pair it up with the nobles, and we can take like plus action and coins or something, and that's going to be like a really good festival. So maybe we don't even bother with the nobles. Maybe we want to go festival, library, courtier, but I think we get a few just because we want the points as well. But we can easily swap into courtier at some point. So yeah, so Masquerade is very good because trashing is very good, and it's the only real trashing card here. Anyway, that was Masquerade. As you can see, it's just a strong opener. A lot of the times it's available, unless it just happens to be outclassed. Usually on the trashing front is the only reason why. Like Masquerade is a top-tier trasher. That's sort of main reason why you get it, usually. And as you can see in all of these, the passing didn't really matter. It just is not a thing that you care about. So anyway, that was Masquerade. I hope this video was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.